2024 has only just begun, and we're already getting a story about a potential domestic terror attack taking place in upstate New York in Rochester. A car filled with explosives barrels into a crowd, killing two, and potentially a third may be about to lose their life. It's a horrifying story. And it seems like what happened was an individual who was depressed, it's been reported, was trying to slam into a group of pedestrians. But as they were speeding towards the group, an Uber pulled out and was hit instead. Pedestrians were still hit, and it did result in the death of some individuals. So I want to go through this story because it is big, and it may or may not be terror. We don't know for sure, but man, heck of a way to kick off 2024. And we are getting warnings up the wazoo. I love it. When, a year or so ago, and I'm being somewhat facetious here, I would talk to people about the Black Swan event. I never used the phrase Black Swan event, but like the potential for conflict, crisis, destabilization, and potentially, civil war. I do love getting credit for the Civil War meme. Everyone keeps saying that it's me, and I'll take it, whatever. But I didn't make this idea. I did not one day just decide something like this was happening. I'm just reading the news. And I would say that based on all of these things, it's certainly on the top of mind. As it goes. Top of mind. Who said that? Was that like Kamala or something? Someone said top of mind, and it was like a big news story. But when you look at this kind of stuff, I don't know that this was political. I'm not saying it was. But you're now seeing, a Putin ally. We got this in Newsweek saying that a civil war would be good. And you have, if you just look at all of the things that have happened over the past several years that in the history books are indicative of a civil war or some kind of societal collapse, then yeah, it's just not out of the question, which I'm going to go through. But the big news today, outside of this story, of course, is what this leads to. We have many articles warning that 2024 will be the year. I don't know that 2024 will be the year. I don't. What I mean by that is this the year where everything just falls apart? Maybe. You could argue 1860 was the year the Civil War actually started in terms of the conflict between states because the secession happened. I think the secession happened in 1860. It may have been January of 1861, but certainly all of this bubbling up, the votes, the process was the year before the inauguration of Abraham Lincoln. And here we sit. We have this story here from Real Clear Politics. CBS's Catherine Herridge predicts Black Swan event in 2024, fertile ground for our adversaries. You may have seen this one in the past week. Of course, I was out. I was in Alaska, actually. I went to Utqiagvik. Sorry, I was in Barrow, Alaska. The locals call it Barrow or Utqiagvik. I don't know. I don't really care one way or the other. But we'll get into all this. I have stuff to say about Alaska too that has an impact on politics as it pertains to this. But of course, we saw this. Putin ally says U.S. civil war will be good for the world. Unheard. The world should fear 2024. We have this from Finbold. This Black Swan event could derail the 2024 U.S. elections, warns entrepreneur Gary Cardone. Oh, it's just all piling up, isn't it? We have this story, of course, we covered a while ago. Colonel Douglas McGregor says we'll never get to the 2024 elections. Banks will close. We have similarly from 2021, retired general thinks the U.S. military could back a coup after the 2024 election. Oh, boy. Wow. And the scariest story here. The DOJ says it will sue Texas if they enforce the new law punishing illegal border crossing. This story right here was probably the most worrying to me, which happened over the Christmas holiday break. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas, spent time with your family, and had a wonderful New Year's Eve, and have a Happy New Year. But this story right here was one of the most worrying. So let's kick off 2024 with a bang. And we have this story. Now, I gave you the gist of this story, and that's really about it. A couple in an Uber were killed. The driver is in critical condition. It is believed the man driving this, I believe he was also killed. They say it was loaded with, I believe, gasoline. And it will be an investigation. We don't know for sure if it was domestic terror. But, as I'm getting ready to launch the first segment of 2024 and I see this story, it's just, it's a bit worrying when I see this, that we have such a shocking moment. And it's not the only, there were some murders that happened on New Year's night, right over the over New Year's. And it's horrifying. But let's talk about family and where we are this year over last. Last year, as the many years previous, I warned that we're heading towards some kind of civil war. And I'll give a shout out to Dave Smith. He came on the show on Timcast IRL and he said, he wanted to give me credit for something I said on the Joe Rogan experience when I was with Jack Dorsey and Vijay Agade, then, CEO and top legal advisor, head of trust and safety. And he said at the end of the show, you mentioned that if they keep doing this kind of stuff, there's going to be a civil war. And yeah, at the time, it was laughable. They laughed. They were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm building a van. Right? At the time, I was building a van. I have the van, by the way. It's got its own electrical system with solar panels and all that stuff. It's been sitting around. I don't really use it, but I'm glad I have it. And at the time, it was a really silly and stupid thing. And I'm like, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm building a bug out van anyway, based on what I'm seeing. Think about where we've gone since then. So when Catherine Herridge on CBS says she fears a black swan event, it could be international conflict, it could be civil war, it could be a combination. These are my opinions based on what we're seeing here. Let me tell you where we're at in the conversations I had, the wonderful conversations I had with family. There are many people that I speak with who I would consider to be normies. That's what we call them, normies, the people who don't really pay attention to politics and don't know what's going on. But it's surprising now how many of these individuals are attuned to the culture wars and the conflict that this country is facing, to the point where a lot of people are asking whether or not there's going to be a 2024 election. It's fascinating. I tweeted out, at what point does Roseanne win her bet with Michael Malice? Michael Malice takes the very broad. Let me slow down. There was a bet on Timcast IRL. Roseanne said there won't be an election. Michael laughed and said, of course there will be. And he bet $1,000. Roseanne's already declaring victory. She said, in her view, she's already won the bet. Okay, well, legitimately, we need a judgment call on this one, because the argument we had with Michael Malice was, at what point is it not really an election? And Michael's point is, if there is a vote, no matter who the people are, you had an election. And I'm like, I agree, legalese, lawyer-wise, if that's how he wants to play it, I'll give it to him. If it's Nikki Haley versus Gavin Newsom and people vote, we had an election. But hold on. Does North Korea have elections? Yes, they do. Okay, is that really the position we're taking here? Is that what Roseanne meant? Now, Roseanne may have said something, meant more like the military would shut it down and it'd be extreme. I don't know. She didn't say that. But I think it's fair to say that if we get to this point where no one believes the election took place, even if there's some kind of Potemkin vote or show vote, there's no election. Thomas Massey tweeted out warning the states that were pulling Trump off the ballot that the GOP, the House, is going to be the ones that they're going to go through as to whether or not they count these votes. So I give you a scenario for 2025. I don't care who wins 2024 in this scenario. Okay, obviously I care who wins, but they pulled Trump off the ballot. Let's say Joe Biden wins. Let's say there's 4 or 5 states where Trump was not on the ballot. Without those states, there is no 270. You need 270 electoral votes to win. Without that, we go to what's called a contingent election, where House delegations will vote for who the president should be. Let's say that there are several states that pulled Trump off, and they likely were going to be Democrat states. Maybe they're not necessarily swing states, but maybe could have been. Maine, perhaps, considering a 3-way race with RFK, Joe Biden, and Trump. Stats show that Trump could take Maine. Now, Maine has, as many of you know, unilaterally decided to remove Trump from the ballot. Let's say that come 2025, Congress just says, nope, you remove Trump from the ballot. You didn't have an election. We don't count your votes. And then nothing gets passed on, and it's frozen there. Then all of a sudden, our Newsom or Biden or whoever it may be doesn't reach the 270 to win. Contingent election, Donald Trump wins. I don't know. But with Massey pointing out that Congress may reject electoral votes from states that remove Trump from the ballot, that may be what they want. So I'm having these conversations with family about the potential for civil war. And I'm asking some of these people when they're like, a year ago, they're incredulous, but open to the idea, like, I don't know, things are getting crazy. And now we have that time travel test. If you were to go back several years, go back to that Joe Rogan podcast episode and lay out everything that's happened since. My stars and garters, my friends, people would be arguing that I was describing actual civil war. Why? If I said that a dozen men tried to kidnap a Democrat governor, If I said that 1,000 plus angry right-wingers would storm the Capitol and shut down the vote, you'd laugh. Now, of course, by today's standards, we don't think that there was a plan. I mean, I think if you look over all the facts and evidence, the Whitmer plot was orchestrated by the FBI for the most part. I should say, absolutely it was. January 6th, of course, was an inside job. That's a fact, not up for debate. And let me stress this again to Reason.com. The ragging on Vivek Ramaswamy, I'd like to stress for all of you. And this is the conversations I'm having with like normie family members, extended family, who don't pay attention. I'm like, January 6th was an inside job. And they're like, oh, what? And I'm like, the Capitol Police opened the doors, fanned people in, and took selfies. If that's not an inside job, I don't know what is. And they're like, yeah, but there were people storming their way into the building. Yes, there were. Of course there were. No one's denying that. That absolutely happened. Those rioters should face criminal charges. And then on the other side of the building, you had cops opening the door, removing barricades, fanning people in, and taking selfies with them, and giving guided tours effectively. Let's drop the language and be as blunt as possible. Several Capitol police officers escorted the Q shaman through the building to the Senate chambers. Inside job. Because if you want to argue the Capitol Police were overwhelmed and didn't know what to do, they could have at the very least left and not assisted the people walking through the building on January 6th. So when I say something like that, people go, wow, what's happening to this country? Yeah. Catherine Herridge predicted a black swan event. Now, look, she's just a journalist. I think she's fairly good. You know, she exposed a lot of corruption. What does she know? What does she know? She is much in a similar position to I. We both read the news. She does more investigative stuff than I do. I do more surface level commentary and cultural analysis. But yeah, I think it would be absurd to deny the reality that a black swan event is coming in 2024. What does that mean for you? Dude, I don't know. I don't lead your life. I don't live your life. And I don't know what you should do because I don't know what your life is all about. I can tell you this. Stand up for what you believe in. Speak your mind. Be brave, as James O'Keefe says. And hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. I'm certainly preparing for the worst. And it's scary. You guys realize that there are several personalities who have already fled the United States. I'm not exaggerating. There are several personalities for varying degrees of fear have fled the United States. I'm not going to drag anybody or call anybody out. Some just said the financial system is in serious jeopardy. The debt is insane. The unrealized losses are terrifying. And it's time to start investing somewhere else that can be more self-sustaining. Oh, boy. But if the U.S. takes a hit economically, like a bad one, it's going to hit everybody massively. Then there are people who are concerned that they're going to be targeted over January 6th. We're already learning about Steve Baker, a journalist, contributor to theblaze.com. They're telling him he's got to turn himself in for overcharges. Taylor Hanson, Tenet Media. We have a show on Tenet Media. Was apparently there were 40 air marshals stalking him over a false investigation. Do you not see what is lying before us? So when I'm talking to people and family members, and this year, it's really interesting because no longer is there doubt. That's the crazy thing. That's probably what scared me the most. I'm hanging out in the suburbs of Chicago with a lot of people who are like, I don't pay attention to too much politics. And then I'm like, you think there's going to be an election? Like, I don't know. And it's, I get asked by one guy and he's like, who do you think's going to win 2024? And I was like, you think someone's going to win 2024? And they laugh because we all get it. In 2016, the Democrats denied the election for years. In fact, many still do deny the 2016 results. We're talking about 8 years ago. 7 years ago, to be fair. They don't believe that Donald Trump actually won. Russian collusion. And we endured that hoax. And, I went along with it. At the time I said, well, let's take a look. This is interesting. I spoke with journalists who were like, dude, you got to see the evidence we have. I was like, wow, really? It's hard to believe, isn't it? Then it was all BS. 2020 comes around. Trump supporters don't believe the election was legitimate either. Now, of course, you can take whatever side you want to take in that conflict. Most of us, I think, listening to this show are probably going to believe that there was foul play in 2020 because they wrote an article explaining how they did it with the shadow campaign. I'm not talking about Dominion voting or flipped votes or double counted votes. By all means, you can track those stories and believe whatever you want. I'm saying outright, an article was written in Time magazine called The Shadow Campaign to save the election. We weren't rigging it. We were fortifying it. Okay, that's the lightest form of they rigged the election. And what I mean by this is, look, guys, elections have always been like this. playing dirty as possible to try to win. If you think there's honor and integrity in elections, I got a bridge to sell you. But what do you think is going to come at the end of this year? What do you think is going to come in this year? You think anyone's going to accept the results? So I'm talking to these Normie family members, and I was like, you think after 2016 and 2020, after January 6th, after everything you think you know, you've heard in the news, you think 2024 ends amicably? I don't see how. But the reality could be more like the Civil War in 1861. An election happens. Now, a lot of people get this wrong, and I may have gotten it wrong too, because there's a meme going around that they pulled Abraham Lincoln off the ballot in 1860, 10 Democrat states. It's technically correct, but it's not literally correct. And so I was trying to find data because I kept hearing it being said. Eric Prince said it. It's like 10 states. And I'm like, wow, really? I'm like, if he's saying it, sounds like it must be true. Like everybody's saying it. So, but I want to do the fact checking, and I read up on it, and it's not how it happened. It used to be back in the day that ballots were issued by parties, and it was basically a ticket saying, y'all want to vote for these guys. And so people could bring these forms and sign it and be like, yeah, I agree. I want to vote for these guys. They did not. It was actually Republicans who did not issue the ballots for Abraham Lincoln in any of these states. Not a single vote for Abraham Lincoln was received in these states. Now, it wasn't because Democrats formally rejected it. It's worse than that. It's because people were scared that if they were seen carrying around a ballot paper issued by the Republican Party at a time near Civil War, you'd be mercilessly beaten in the streets. Yeah, maybe a little bit of an exaggeration. But I read a couple different academic articles on how the elections, I should say opinion pieces, and I think it was one academic article that was breaking down the election process of 1860. And once again, the idea was the parties would print their own ballots. You'd go in and you just vote. You'd be like, who should I vote for? And so the parties would say, here's our people that are running. So if you were a Democrat, you'd be like, these are the people we want to vote for. And then they would issue and then other candidates, there would be different. It was basically just like advisory. Like, guys, these are people who, because there was no formal public paper saying like, here are the candidates. It was feared. If you were in a Democrat secessionist state, if you were seen carrying a ballot for the Republicans, you'd be shunned, ostracized, you'd be canceled, you could be beaten, you could be attacked. I mean, there's a caning in Congress. It was that extreme. Bleeding Kansas had been going on for 7 years. And so when you have John Brown blasting people in the face, those tensions are extreme. And people are like, I don't want to be seen carrying this vote. So what I read was that Abraham Lincoln didn't get a single vote from a single individual in these 10 Democrat states that eventually went on to secede. Or I'm sorry, in the states that went on to secede, Abraham Lincoln got no votes. You take a look at where we're headed now, and it may be comparable. It may be something like that, but for different reasons. It may be that Donald Trump receives no votes from any of these states because he's not on the ballot. So it's different. And I ask people this, would you call that an election? I mean, Donald Trump's the front runner. Donald Trump is not just the front runner for the Republican Party. He's the front runner for 2024. He is polling in the lead among 18 to 34-year-olds. Donald Trump has the youth vote right now. That's insane. Donald Trump, guys, it's what is it? The day after Christmas. We're leaving. I'm leaving the airport in a shuttle. Our shuttle driver is I would say a young man, but not like young. Maybe he's in his late 20s. Young black man. And he's like, who you voting for? And then I was like, or he said, who do you want for 2024? And I was like, oh boy, well, he's like, just say Trump. And I laughed. And I'm like, oh yeah, no question, Trump. And I'm like, I like Vivek, but I think this is where we're at right now. Trump is the front runner, and I think he's our best path forward. Not that he's perfect, blah, blah, blah. Dude told me a private jet came in from Swift Air. This is what he said. And I don't know if it's true. Had 140 illegal immigrants on it. He said they were told that it was the Blackhawks, that a private jet, I think it was a 737, was coming in, and that they had to take the bags off and everything and service the plane because it was the Blackhawks. You guys know the Blackhawks, Chicago Blackhawks. These guys, he said, we were so excited. We ride up to service the plane. We open up the cargo, and there's 3 garbage bags. And we're like, what is this? Then we find out all illegal immigrants, and we were pissed off. And I asked him, I was like, why did they lie to you, man? And he's like, man, they wanted to get us excited and get us to go work this plane. And I said, is it because you guys would not have done it if they told you you'd be servicing illegal immigrants? He's like, yup. And I was just like, wow, dude. Wow. He said they told him it was the Blackhawks. He's like, bro, these flights are coming in all the time. All the time, every day. Now, a lot of people blame Greg Abbott. They're like, oh, Greg Abbott's doing this, dude. Let me tell you where we're currently at. All right? We got a lot to talk about today. U.S. DOJ says it'll sue Texas if they enforce a new law punishing illegal border crossings. This one was like a punch in the gut when I saw the story. December 28th. I'm on vacation, guys. You know, that last week of the year, we take off. And I'll tell you why. Not because I want to take vacation. I'm not a vacation kind of guy. It's because nobody wants to work. It's not me. I mean, I can't expect anybody to work Christmas Eve, Christmas, or the day after Christmas. It's travel time. And then the last few days, you think anybody wants to leave their family and then fly immediately to D.C. to come on Timcast IRL? Nah, so that week is off. And then it's like, what? New Year's Day? Good luck. That's a bank holiday as it is, so we don't work New Year's Day. But here I am sitting and I see this story and I'm like, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene warns national divorce is coming. And this story, I'll tell you why this story is terrifying. Because it made me realize something as we're talking. There's a question right now of, and it depends on who you are if you want to even ask the question. There's a question of, who's the legitimate government of the United States? Is there a legitimate government? And I'll tell you what this means. Article 4, Section 4, shout out to Josie, the redheaded libertarian. She tweets this out. The Constitution guarantees the states that the federal government will protect them from invasion. On the southern border in Texas, in Arizona, you have these terrifying videos. When I showed this video that Marjorie Taylor Greene posted, when I showed it to normies, they started panicking. Let me actually, I didn't pull this one up. I'm going to pull this video up and I'm going to show you. And it's from like, I got to search. It's a video of thousands of illegal immigrants storming the U.S. border, storming it. And I'm talking to regular people who are like, man, things are getting crazy. And this is why I say the normies are freaking out. Because you watch this video and it looks like we are actually under attack. Actually under attack. Give me a second as I scroll through here and try and find this tweet. Man, when was this? December 28th. Man, there's so much to go through. So much to go through. It's kind of scary. From Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, I got these really beautiful pictures from Alaska on my Twitter profile. And scrolling down, we got Nikki Haley talking about slavery. We got, what day was this, man? AOC saying there is no invasion. There's no invasion at all. I remember, yeah, okay. Here's me flying, and we're scrolling down. Give me 2 seconds. I pattern my way through trying to find this video, and I found it. Okay. Let me pull this video up for you. The Biden administration, here's what Marjorie Taylor Greene says. The Biden administration has created the most dangerous national security crisis in history. They've legalized human trafficking of millions, allowed 1.8 million gotaways, and are harboring illegals. Impeach Mayorkas. Take a look at this video. These people in this video are all walking in the thousands, but it's this video right here that made extended family members panic. Take a look. You know, I'll get the audio on this one. I wasn't planning it, but we'll get the audio on this one. Take a look at this video. Okay, that's not real audio, but as you can see, you've got people. They appear to be crawling under the bollard fencing, right here on the right. There's thousands of people crawling under the wall, and they're running full speed into the country. Yo, I showed this video to normies, and I could see the panic in their eyes. All of a sudden, the question's like, wait, what is this? What is this? What's going on? And I'm like, this is what's happening at the southern border. But I'll tell you what, my friends, I was in Chicago, and all anybody could talk about, I'm exaggerating. A subject of conversation was they're building camps in Chicago. There's homeless everywhere. They're cutting benefits. We're paying taxes. This is getting insane. Let's talk about the questions that arise then. If the federal government is not only ignoring the Constitution, but it's violating it with false investigations, trumped up charges, and politicized arrests, it's just not the government. I mean, it's that simple. Who is the legitimate government? I don't know. Now, when you have, this is where the scary question comes into place. When you have armed men who act on the authority of government, so they claim, and they begin arresting people, well, for the most part, we agree to a matter of, to a degree of confidence, the American people, like we recognize who the government is. But when the FBI arrests the former president, When you have in Maine, in Colorado, unilateral removal. I shouldn't say in Colorado, but I believe it was legitimate. When you have the removal of the front runner from the election, let me stress something. Donald Trump is the front runner for the entire election. In Maine, the Secretary of State just said, "Nah, Trump's out. He's gone." That is not a governmental function. That is not a constitutional function. Okay, so they are not the government. But you say, yeah, but they're sitting in the office. Doesn't mean anything. We are a country of the consent of the governed. We agree on who the government is when they act within the confines of the law and our constitutional mandate. If the federal government has begun to act outside of that, then they're just rogue elements claiming they're the government. What makes someone a government actor? They are operating within the constitutional framework. If the federal government has begun arresting innocent people, trumping up charges, well, these are just armed guys locking people in rooms. And this is what I feared would happen. As I said throughout the last year, imagine this scenario. One day you go downstairs, there's a knock on your door, and you look to the people and there's a clown, like a literal clown with makeup and everything. You're like, huh? You say, can I help you? And they go, police, open the door. You go, what? You're not a cop, you're a clown. They're like, no, police, open up now. And then he puts his hand on his firearm. Then you see 3 more clowns walk up behind him. You're like, there's 3 clowns outside my house with guns claiming to be police. These are just clowns. You open the door. They say they got a warrant for your arrest or something. And you're like, guys, you're just 3 clowns. You're not agents of the government. They claim to be. And then a fight ensues. I say to imagine this scenario because we could all understand the absurdity of a guy in a clown costume claiming to be a cop. You'd be like, dude, I ain't buying it. They show you a warrant and it's got like, daisies on it and it's written in crayon. And you're like, guys, that is a crayon drawing, not a warrant. You wouldn't obey it, right? This is the issue of civil war. This is what people don't understand. Where we are right now and what I fear, the federal government has told Texas, not only will we not enforce the law, we will operate in counterance to the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, abetting an invasion into your state. And if you try and stop us, we will use the weight of government to try and stop you. I saw this story and I said, whoa, wait, hold on. 9th and 10th Amendment, Texas can do what it must. You can make an argument that international relations, the Mexican border, and these non-citizens don't fall under the protections of the 9th and 10th Amendment because they are not unto the states themselves. It's an operation of the federal government. But when we then get into Article 4, Section 4, the federal government must protect from invasion, and they are abetting the invasion. They're just guys claiming they're the government. This is what I warned about. You are the government when you operate within the Constitution as we have consented to be governed. And many have argued we're now in a post-constitutional country. I disagree. The government of this country is based upon the Constitution, the supreme law of the land. And if someone goes out against it, then they're just a rogue element. If a cop kicked your door without a warrant and shot somebody, and they would arrest the guy. But I'm a cop. No, you're not. Cops have to get warrants to get signed off by judges and operate within the confines of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all the amendments. If a soldier kicked your door in and went and slept in your house, he'd get arrested. When the federal government sends agents to abet an invasion, you'd think committing the crime would result in an arrest. But there's no one to arrest them. So what happens when Texas, their law enforcement, looks at a guy in uniform abetting the invasion, and they say, you may as well be a dude in a clown costume trying to claim you have some authority you don't have. Now, it could be as simple as Texas law enforcement says to these quote unquote federal actors, you can't stop us. You guys don't, you're breaking the law. If a cop robs a bank and then claims, I was told to do it by the chief of police because the money is evidence, they're going to be like, nice try, buddy. If the chief of police orders police officers to go and rob a bank, they're going to be like, you can't do that. If the federal government instructs its agents to abet an invasion in violation of Article 4, Section 4, at what point does Texas say you are a rogue element, not the government? That terrified me. Because sooner or later, you either get individual citizens just saying outright, you're not law enforcement, you're breaking the law. I brought this up several months ago, before the Texas thing even happened. When they were lifting the barricades, I'm like, federal law enforcement are abetting criminal activity. Criminal. You're allowed to be a refugee in this country, but you have to apply legally. There's a process, a legal process. Entering the country illegally is a crime. It's a literal crime. I remember when AOC was talking to, was it Homan? And she was like, legal asylees are not criminals. And he goes, Article Section 3, blah, blah, blah. And he reads off criminal code. And he's like, entering the country illegally is a criminal violation, ma'am. And everybody laughed. It is codified in the law federally. They broke the law. So federal agents are abetting these criminals. We're here. It's happening right now. There is a question of who is the legitimate government already. That's it. I'm sorry. It's true. I'm not saying everybody who works at the federal level we're questioning. No. Obviously, there are politicians. We know they're elected representatives. I'm saying, who are these quote unquote law enforcement guys breaking the law in brazen plain view? Merrick Garland? It's getting serious, isn't it? I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. All I can do is read the news and make a point about what we're seeing right now. And it's this simple. Let's go back in time. 2019. I'm sitting with Joe Rogan. And instead of saying, if you keep doing what you're doing, y'all are going to see a civil war. And instead I said, where do I see this going? In a few years, a sitting member of Congress will advocate for national divorce, or at least warn that it's imminent. National divorce, the breaking of the union. You will have had in the media the alleged claims or the allegations that several men were attempting to kidnap a Democrat governor. 1,000+ men will riot in front of the Capitol building trying to storm their way in. And this would temporarily impede the electoral vote count. There would be widespread claims of voter fraud. Imagine if I said that. They'd be like, wow, those are all really specific predictions. And then it all happened. What if I said several years ago, federal law enforcement agents will begin aiding and abetting 10,000 people plus per day physically breaking through the U.S. southern border. The DOJ will threaten anyone who tries to stop them. Let me stress that for you again. Go back 7 years and say, several years from now, the Department of Justice, the federal government, will send law enforcement to destroy southern border barriers to aid illegal immigrants to the tune of 10,000 plus per day. Texas will be frantic to stop them, deploying their National Guard and their law enforcement. The federal government will then threaten them with legal action for trying to stop what is clearly illegal and unconstitutional actions on the part of the federal government. You'd be like, what? Hey, let's throw in Texas v. Pennsylvania. What if I told you in 2019, in 2 years, at the end of the 2020 election, you're going to have 48 states involved in an original jurisdiction lawsuit to the Supreme Court over questions about the constitutionality of the election itself. Amazing. And think about where history may end up. Maybe tomorrow everything ends. I love saying it. Maybe tomorrow everything stops, it calms down, the election goes off without a hitch, and we're like, wow, we averted the worst. Because I've been saying that over and over again. And why? It's a caveat. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it does. Maybe we chill out. But think about where this all goes, where we are now, and what the next step's going to be. And everyone just keeps saying. In the article from Unheard, the world should fear 2024, they say, Aris Rusinos. Aris, I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. I actually worked with him. I went on a trip with him to Egypt once. Good dude. Writing for Unheard. He's writing mostly about world conflict, global conflict, but he does mention the state of U.S. internal politics, domestic politics. And he just says everything points towards escalation. Let me just, I think he actually used the word escalation, both globally and domestically. He says, so endemic has the sense of crisis, both globally and domestically, become that the most dangerous nuclear escalation. That's the wrong part. I think he used, he used escalation several times. Oh, okay. It's like right in the front. Escalation lurks on every battlefield. But he made a point about, here we go. The Gaza war, blah, 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 drives the U.S. to seek a swift resolution of the conflict. The logic of events leads towards escalation. You tell me what's going to happen. I don't care, man. You can laugh and say, Tim Pool, Civil War, blah, blah, blah. Dude, say whatever you want. I don't care, dude. I'm buying emergency food. We're preparing for the worst. You do whatever you want, man. 2024, here we go. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. This is a long segment. We got more to talk about culturally. It's not all bad. It's not all bad. Dave Chappelle's new special's out. It's getting rave reviews. The culture war is on in full swing. We're going to get the results. I think Together Again is going to chart pretty well. I think it's going to do pretty well. Ladies and gentlemen, Together Again, the song we put out, already hit the Billboard charts for the week before the launch. So it's looking good. This may be our first single to chart 2 weeks in a row, maybe even 3. And, it's not all bad. It's not all bad. We just got to pay attention. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.